Rich Ace Franklin would have taken the scale this week, but Lil Nog had to pull out due to a shoulder injury. Rich took the MMAthletics crew through one of the most insane circuit trainings you've ever seen. Rich, you're up in our next installment of Open Guard.
Fighting out of Cincinnati, Ohio, USA, ladies and gentlemen, presenting the former UFC middleweight champion,
Rich Franklin is one of the many stars in the UFC, but his journey to the octagon was different than most of his contemporaries.
I've been an athlete my whole life. My senior year of high school, after football was over, I got into martial arts, and it was around basically like right after my senior year I saw the first UFC, so I became a fan. Really, when I was doing martial arts, I kind of just set out to learn how to defend myself in case I ever got in a fight on the street or something like that, but it was keeping me active and athletic. So I trained the whole time I was in college, and one of my buddies, my senior year of college, basically said, "Rich, all you do is ever train, why don't you take an amateur fight?" So I did. Long story short, it happened to be something that I was good at. And so I graduated from college, I started teaching high school, and there were times I would come into like teaching and have like, you know, twisted or broken ankle or something like that from a fight or from a training session, and coming in on crutches or black eyes or stitches, and it just, you know, happened all the time. In my fourth year of teaching, I thought, maybe I can actually try to do this full time, just see how it works out for me, and it paid off.
Rich's popularity has grown alongside that of the UFC. His breakout moment came with a knockout victory over UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock.
That fight was the season 1 Ultimate Fighter finale, and it was the first fight that they had done on regular cable television rather than a pay-per-view. You can hear stories about how big the ratings jumped during the Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin fight, which was a tough act to follow, by the way. But I fought Ken right after that fight, so all these people were tuned in, and suddenly like millions and millions and millions of people that otherwise wouldn't have seen the fight if it were pay-per-view saw me fight, and it put me on the map. And suddenly I went from being nobody to the guy that beat Ken Shamrock. I still didn't have a name.
In his following fight, Rich would capture the UFC's middleweight title.
You know, a lot of times in life, when you set your mind on a goal, the journey towards that goal means way more than the actual goal itself. I remember the night that I won my title fight, I had my belt, and I walked upstairs to my hotel room, and my wife was with me. And I remember setting my belt down on the bed, and I was looking at it, and I was standing there just kind of, just like this, like kind of scratching my head, like, I don't really feel like a champion. Like, you know, life was the same pretty much, and it didn't really feel any different. But that whole journey to get there was a really, really important process. It meant a lot to me.
After successfully defending the belt twice, he was dethroned by the most dangerous fighter in the sport, Anderson Silva.
I knew Anderson was a tough fighter. I knew that was going to be a tough fight, and I'd seen some of his fights in Pride and all that kind of stuff. And I knew that he had been around, and I knew that he had tough Muay Thai. So although he didn't have a name for himself, anybody that was in the business knew exactly what kind of name he had made for himself.
Payback is a good motivator, and after winning 2 consecutive fights, Rich earned another shot at Silva.
The first fight, when I broke the fight down with my coaching staff, I'm a much bigger guy than Anderson is, so we really neglected like any kind of clinch training, which was just a strategic mistake on our part. I guess we figured that I was going to be a lot stronger than him, and that would not be a problem area for that fight. So we spent a lot of time working clinch and clinch defense and all that kind of stuff for the second fight, and it paid off. The whole first round of that fight was a great round for me. You know, I didn't get in any trouble in the clinch. I was very active with my jab. Things were landing, but then I just got clipped in the jaw at the end of that round. And of course, anytime you see somebody's cornerman come up and actually pick them up to carry them back to the corner is not a good, doesn't make for a good second round. After I lost the second fight to Anderson Silva, the UFC basically said to me, even if you win a couple fights here at 185 and work your way back to the title, we're not interested in putting on a Franklin Silva 3. So basically, for the most part, I was going to be pigeonholed into this gatekeeper position, and I didn't want to do that. So I decided that, they had recommended that I move up to 205 a couple times, and at first I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And finally I was like, all right, fine, I'll move back up to 205 then, and that's what I did. At least at 205 I could at least have a goal that I can aim for. It's tough on me. I'm in a situation, I'm not a real big 205-pound fighter, and I'm a really big 185-pound fighter, and I don't have a home there anymore, so I'm just kind of stuck in this no man's land of 205, where I'm in a class of talented athletes and guys that are bigger than me. It motivates me because it's a more challenging situation to train harder and to be prepared for the match.
Rich was supposed to fight Antonio Little Nog Nogueira at UFC 133, but his opponent pulled out of the fight due to injury.
Quite honestly, I never pictured myself fighting Nogueira. This wasn't an opponent that we called out or anything like that. This was something the UFC brought to us. In my career, I've never really gone to the UFC and requested a fighter. I've never said, I want to fight this guy. I'm one of those guys, they bring me somebody, I'm like, okay, whatever.
Rich Franklin is at a point in his career where he doesn't know what's around the corner. He only takes fights against named opponents and trains daily with young, hungry lions. It appears where he goes from here will depend entirely on his own motivation.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to fight for. I don't have an end point. I'm one of those guys. First of all, I wake up every day and I like doing what I do. I mean, you see what I go through. It's not fun to come in and toss tires around and then turn around a few hours later and get punched in the face by guys that are 30 pounds bigger than you. But this is what I love to do. And I think for me, fortunately, my body is in good shape, and I feel like I can continue to go and go. One day I'll wake up and I'll say, you know what, I think I've had enough. And when that day comes, I'll deal with that then. But for now, I'm doing what I enjoy.